Picture four people, each in a relationship that just hit a rough patch, a disagreement, a moment of distance, something ordinary and survivable. Watch what each of them does next, and you'll see something remarkable. They don't just react differently. They seem to be operating from entirely different definitions of what love actually requires. One person reaches out immediately, needing reassurance, needing the distance closed as quickly as possible. Another pulls back, needing space, quietly relieved by the distance rather than threatened by it. A third does both at once, in the same conversation, reaching for closeness and then flinching away from it seconds later, as if being pulled in two directions by two different hands. And a fourth simply stays present, uncomfortable but not destabilized, trusting that the relationship can survive an ordinary rupture without becoming an emergency. These four responses aren't random personality quirks. They're four attachment styles, first mapped by psychologist Mary Ainsworth in the 1970s and expanded considerably since, and they describe something far more consequential than how someone behaves during a minor conflict. They describe the entire internal architecture a person uses to interpret closeness, distance, safety, and threat inside every relationship they'll ever have. And left unexamined, each of the insecure styles has a specific, almost mechanical way of quietly dismantling a relationship from the inside, often while both people involved are convinced they're simply doing their best. So today we're going to walk through all four: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized, not as static labels to diagnose yourself or your partner with, but as different sets of rules for managing intimacy, rules that were written a long time ago, usually in childhood, and are still running quietly in the background of every relationship you've ever had. Let's start with the foundation these categories are built on. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and expanded by Ainsworth's research, proposes that early relationships with caregivers teach a child a set of expectations about closeness. Is comfort available when I need it? Can I rely on this person to respond consistently? Is expressing a need safe? Or does it create distance instead? These expectations, formed long before a child has language to describe them, become a kind of internal working model, a template the brain later uses, mostly unconsciously, to predict how relationships are supposed to work. It's worth saying clearly, before going further, that these styles describe tendencies and probabilities rather than fixed identities. Research on earned secure attachment shows that people move between these categories over time, particularly through corrective relationship experiences and therapeutic work. Nobody is permanently sentenced to a style they developed as a child. But understanding the style you're currently operating from is often the fastest way to recognize the specific damage it can do if left unexamined. Let's begin with secure attachment, since it's the baseline the other three deviate from. Securely attached people generally had caregivers who were consistently responsive, not perfect, but reliable enough that the child learned closeness could be trusted. As adults, securely attached people tend to communicate needs directly, tolerate conflict without treating it as catastrophic, and extend trust to a partner without requiring constant proof. This doesn't mean secure people never feel hurt, jealous, or insecure. It means they have a wider capacity to tolerate those feelings without the relationship itself feeling like it's under threat every time discomfort shows up. Here's what's worth noting about secure attachment in the context of destructive relationship patterns, because it's easy to assume secure people are simply immune to relational damage. They're not. A securely attached person paired with a partner running a very different set of rules can still end up in a relationship that slowly erodes, not because their own attachment style is causing harm, but because security alone doesn't prevent an insecure partner's pattern from doing damage. Secure attachment describes your own internal stability. It doesn't automatically transform the dynamic you're in. Now, let's turn to anxious attachment, sometimes called anxious preoccupied. This style tends to develop when caregiving was inconsistent rather than absent, warm at times, unavailable at others, in a way the child could never fully predict. The child learns that love is real but unreliable, and that vigilance, staying alert to any sign of withdrawal, is the only way to keep it from disappearing. In adult relationships, this shows up as a persistent need for reassurance, heightened sensitivity to any perceived distance, and a tendency to escalate contact the moment a partner seems less available than usual. The damage this does to a relationship rarely looks dramatic in any single moment. It looks like a slow accumulation of pressure, checking in constantly, needing conflicts resolved immediately rather than given time to settle, interpreting a partner's ordinary need for space as a sign the relationship is failing. Partners of anxiously attached people often describe feeling like nothing they do is ever quite enough to produce lasting reassurance, because the reassurance genuinely doesn't last. It gets consumed by the anxiety almost as quickly as it's given, and this cycle starts again within hours or days. The specific way this style destroys relationships is through exhaustion by accumulation. No single request for reassurance is unreasonable, but the frequency and intensity, sustained over months and years, can wear down even a patient, loving partner, who eventually starts to associate the relationship itself with a kind of chronic emotional labor, always managing, always reassuring, rarely simply resting in the connection. Now consider the opposite pattern, avoidant attachment, sometimes called dismissive-avoidant. This style tends to develop when a caregiver was consistently unavailable, not necessarily hostile, sometimes simply distant, uncomfortable with emotion, or dismissive of a child's needs for comfort. The child learns something logical given that environment. Needs, when expressed, don't get met and might even create friction. So, the safest strategy becomes needing less, or at least appearing to need less, and relying primarily on yourself. In adult relationships, this shows up as discomfort with emotional intimacy, a strong preference for independence, difficulty naming feelings even when they're clearly present, and a tendency to withdraw exactly when a relationship starts asking for more depth or vulnerability. Avoidantly attached people are often perfectly capable partners in the early, lower-stakes phase of a relationship, and even in periods that require practical reliability. Where the pattern surfaces are precisely when things deepen, when a partner starts wanting more emotional presence, more vulnerability, more of the kind of closeness that an avoidant nervous system learned, early and thoroughly, to associate with risk rather than safety. The specific way avoidant attachment destroys relationships is through a kind of ceiling effect. The relationship can function, sometimes for years, but it rarely deepens past a certain point because deepening requires exactly the vulnerability the avoidant partner has spent a lifetime protecting against. Partners of avoidantly attached people often describe a particular loneliness that shows up even while the relationship is, on paper, stable, a sense of being with someone who is present but never quite fully reachable, as though there's a locked room in the relationship that never opens no matter how long you wait outside it. It's worth noting something counterintuitive here. Avoidant attachment is frequently mistaken, both by the avoidant person and by their partners, for simple independence or high emotional maturity. Someone who rarely seems bothered by anything, who handles stress alone, who doesn't seem to need much from a partner, can look, on the surface, like the healthiest person in the relationship. But there's an important difference between genuine emotional regulation and suppression that's been mistaken for regulation. A securely attached person can access their feelings and choose not to be overwhelmed by them. An avoidantly attached person often has genuine difficulty accessing the feelings in the first place, not because they aren't there, but because the pathway to noticing and expressing them was closed off early, as a survival strategy that worked at the time, and has simply never been reopened. Now for the fourth style, disorganized attachment, sometimes called fearful avoidant, which combines features of both anxious and avoidant patterns in a way that can look confusing even to the person experiencing it. This style tends to develop in environments where the caregiver was, at different times, both a source of comfort and a source of fear, inconsistent in a more destabilizing way than simple unavailability, sometimes frightening, sometimes frighten themselves, sometimes loving. The child faces an impossible situation. The person they need to run to for safety is also, at times, the source of danger, and no consistent strategy, neither pure pursuit nor pure withdrawal, ever fully resolves that contradiction. In adult relationships, this shows up as an oscillation between craving closeness and fearing it, sometimes within the same conversation. A disorganized attachment style might pursue a partner intensely during a period of distance, then abruptly withdraw the moment that closeness is actually offered, creating a push and pull that can feel, to both people involved, disorienting and exhausting. Unlike anxious attachment, which consistently pursues, or avoidant attachment, which consistently withdraws, disorganized attachment does both, unpredictably, often in response to internal cues the person themselves doesn't fully understand. The specific way disorganized attachment destroys relationships is through instability that neither partner can predict or plan around. A partner of someone with this style often describes feeling like they're constantly adjusting to a moving target, never sure whether today calls for giving space or offering reassurance, because the same behavior that was welcomed yesterday might be experienced as suffocating today. This unpredictability, more than any single behavior, is often what erodes trust over time, not because either person is acting in bad faith, but because the underlying pattern genuinely doesn't offer consistent signals to respond to. It's worth pausing here to note how these four styles interact with each other, because attachment patterns rarely operate in isolation. They exist inside a relationship with another person's pattern, and certain combinations tend to produce specific, almost predictable dynamics. An anxious partner paired with an avoidant partner is one of the more commonly discussed combinations, and for good reason, because it tends to create a self-reinforcing cycle. The anxious partner's pursuit of closeness triggers the avoidant partner's need for space. The avoidant partner's withdrawal triggers the anxious partner's fear of abandonment, which produces more pursuit, which produces more withdrawal. Each person's coping strategy directly activates the other's deepest fear, and without awareness of what's happening, both partners can end up locked in a cycle that feels, from the inside, like proof the relationship is fundamentally incompatible, when it's often simply two old patterns responding to each other exactly as they were built to. Consider a composite example of this exact dynamic, a couple we'll call Tara and Josh. Tara grew up with a mother who was warm in bursts and overwhelmed the rest of the time, and developed an anxious style, quick to seek reassurance, deeply attuned to any shift in Josh's mood. Josh grew up with a father who treated emotional expression as a weakness and developed an avoidant style, comfortable with practical support but uneasy whenever a conversation moved toward feelings. Early in their relationship, this looked almost complementary, Tara's warmth drawing Josh out of his usual reserve, Josh's calm steadiness feeling like relief after Tara's previous, more chaotic relationships. Within a year, the same traits had reversed in meaning. Tara's need for frequent check-ins started to feel, to Josh, like pressure he couldn't escape. Josh's need for solitary time to process stress started to feel, to Tara, like evidence she was being pushed away. Neither of them had changed. Their original patterns had simply started colliding rather than complementing each other, exactly as the underlying mismatch predicted they eventually would. What made this particularly hard to resolve wasn't a lack of love between them. It was that each partner's coping strategy was, quite literally, the other partner's trigger. When Tara reached for reassurance, Josh's nervous system read it as intrusion and pulled back. When Josh pulled back, Tara's nervous system read it as abandonment and reached harder. Without outside perspective, both of them concluded, independently, that the other person was fundamentally wrong for them, when what was actually happening was two old, well-worn survival strategies responding to each other with mechanical precision, one marked by intensity and frequent reassurance seeking on both sides, which can feel deeply validating in the beginning. Finally, someone who understands how much I need to talk things through, but can also escalate conflict quickly since neither partner has the internal stability to de-escalate a moment of tension before it grows. Two avoidantly attached partners together often produce a relationship that looks calm and low conflict from the outside, precisely because neither partner pushes the other toward the vulnerability that would otherwise surface the avoidance. This can persist for years, sometimes an entire relationship, without either partner fully recognizing how much genuine intimacy has been avoided altogether, simply because neither one ever asked for more. A disorganized partner paired with either an anxious or avoidant partner tends to produce a particularly confusing dynamic, since the disorganized partner's unpredictability doesn't match either the anxious partner's expectation of consistent pursuit or the avoidant partner's expectation of consistent distance. Both other styles find themselves consistently unable to locate a workable pattern to respond to, which is disorienting in a specific way, because at least anxious and avoidant styles are internally consistent, even if incompatible. Disorganized attachment offers no consistent pattern at all. None of this is meant to suggest that certain combinations are doomed, or that people with insecure attachment styles can't build lasting, healthy relationships. What it does suggest is that the specific conflicts a couple keeps having, the same argument in different clothing, the same cycle of pursuit and withdrawal, the same accumulation of small resentments, often aren't really about the surface issue at all. They're about two old, mostly unconscious systems colliding, each one responding not to the actual present moment, but to a much older set of rules about what closeness means and how dangerous it might be. So, what actually helps here beyond simply knowing which category you or a partner might fall into? The first and most useful shift is learning to distinguish between a partner's behavior and a partner's attachment system reacting. When a partner withdraws, it's tempting to interpret that as a statement about how much they care. Often, it's closer to an old, automatic response to closeness that has very little to do with how they feel about you specifically, and understanding that distinction can lower the emotional stakes of a given moment considerably, without requiring either partner to pretend the behavior doesn't matter at all. The second shift involves recognizing that attachment style isn't destiny, but it also doesn't change simply because you've read about it or watched a video explaining it. Movement towards secure attachment, what researchers call earned security, tends to happen slowly, through repeated experiences of a partner responding differently than an old pattern predicted they would, an anxious partner learning, gradually, that a moment of distance doesn't have to end in abandonment, an avoidant partner learning, gradually, that vulnerability doesn't have to end in engulfment or loss of self. These lessons can't be rushed, and they rarely stick after a single good conversation. They accumulate the same slow way the original patterns did, through repetition over time. The third shift, often the hardest, involves each partner taking ownership of their own pattern rather than treating the other person's attachment style as something to be managed or fixed on their behalf. An anxious partner learning to self-soothe rather than outsourcing all reassurance to a partner. An avoidant partner learning to name a feeling even when the instinct is to retreat into silence. These are internal shifts each person has to make largely on their own, even inside a supportive relationship, because no partner, however loving, can single-handedly rewire another person's attachment system from the outside. A fourth shift involves learning to communicate needs in the specific language the other person's system can actually hear, rather than the language that comes most naturally to your own style. An anxious partner asking an avoidant partner for constant verbal reassurance may find it repeatedly falls flat, not because the avoidant partner doesn't care, but because that particular request lands directly on their most sensitive spot. A more workable request might involve smaller, less loaded forms of reassurance, a brief check-in rather than an extended conversation, given at a pace the avoidant nervous system can actually tolerate without triggering withdrawal. Similarly, an avoidant partner asking for space is often better received when it comes with a specific, concrete time frame attached, "I need an hour, and then I want to talk," rather than an open-ended withdrawal that leaves an anxious partner with nothing to hold on to in the meantime. Neither adjustment requires abandoning your own needs. It simply means packaging them in a way the other person's system has a realistic chance of receiving well. A fifth shift involves recognizing the difference between accommodating a partner's attachment style temporarily, as an act of care while they do their own work, and permanently reorganizing your entire life around it. There's a meaningful difference between an avoidant partner asking for occasional space during a stressful week and a relationship where one partner has quietly stopped expressing any needs at all in order to avoid triggering the other's withdrawal. The first is reasonable accommodation. The second is a relationship slowly organizing itself entirely around one person's limitations, and it tends to produce exactly the kind of quiet resentment that erodes a relationship over years rather than all at once. Here's the insight worth carrying out of this. None of these four styles are character flaws, and none of them describe a person's capacity to love. They describe the specific rules a nervous system learned, early and reasonably, about how to survive closeness in the environment it was given. The relationships that suffer most aren't necessarily the ones with the most insecure attachment in the room. They're the ones where nobody ever stops to ask what old rule is actually running the current moment, mistaking an ancient survival strategy for a verdict about love itself, and responding to the strategy instead of to the person standing in front of them.